Hello everyone, and welcome to another installment of Draco Dormians. Um, you know, I was never actually a fan of the Harry-Hermione ship, nor even the Hermione-Draco ship. I have separate separate ships that I prefer, but maybe I'll go into those later. But I just wanted to say that those ships are not my favorite. You would think that because of that this story would absolutely annoy me, but it does and it doesn't. But anyway, let's get into it. Chapter 8. Malfoy Blood. There was light, and it moved beyond the skin of his eyelids like darting points of fire. Harry groaned and opened his eyes. He was in Draco's bedroom, lying spread-eagled on the bed. He couldn't have lain any other way, since each of his wrists was tied to a bedpost. His head ached with a dull, booming pain, as if someone were striking a gong behind his temples. "Hold still," said a voice. Harry whipped his head to the side and stared. It was Narcissa. She was holding a large, bone-handled saw. Harry shut his eyes again. "I'm having a nightmare," he told himself, "and it's a really dumb one." He opened his eyes, but Narcissa was still there. She had applied the edge of the saw to the ropes that bound his left hand to the bed and was sawing away at them. She was very pale, and her eyes were twitching from side to side in that weird little tick Harry was beginning to get used to. He did wish she wouldn't do it while holding a saw so close to his artery, though. "Narcissa," he said. Mum, what?" His left arm came free, and he turned to his side to watch her slicing away at the ropes on his right. "Your father," said Narcissa haltingly, "doesn't want you trying to get into the dungeons to get to your girlfriend." She held up a hand at the panicked expression that flashed across Harry's face. "She's fine." He put her in with Sirius Black. Her eyes were twitching again. "Sirius will look after her." His right arm came free. Harry sat up and started massaging the blood back into his hands. The last thing he remembered was being knocked to the floor by one of Lucius's Death Eaters. "They didn't hurt Hermione, did they?" he asked, because Lucius was about to— "Oh, he would have killed her," said Narcissa woodenly. "He did the Cruciatus curse on her to try to get her to tell him where Harry Potter was, but she wouldn't." Harry went numb from feeling like he was going to throw up. What happened? "Your father," she said, "says that Harry Potter was there. Apparently he has an invisibility cloak of some sort. He revealed himself, and the Death Eaters took him." She showed no emotion as she said this. Harry struggled to sit up. He put his numb hands on top of Narcissa's hands, which were as cold as ice. She was still holding the knife. "Mum," he said, "please believe me. This is really important. I know it's hard for you, but is Harry still alive?" She nodded. "Where is he?" "In the fencing room," she said, and as she spoke, 2 huge tears slid out of her eyes and down her thin face. Harry felt horribly sorry for her, but his mind was on getting to Draco. He slid off the bed, tested his legs to make sure they worked. They did, and raced out the door. Narcissa watched him go. Hermione was in Diagon Alley. Harry was with her. and they were shopping for socks. This was a new one on Hermione. She had never dreamt about sock shopping with Harry before. Harry made frequent appearances in her dreams, usually wearing nothing but socks, but this dream didn't seem to be tending in that direction. This Harry was fully dressed and looking very serious. They weren't getting far with their sock search. All the stores seemed to be boarded up, dark and empty. People on the street hurried past without looking at them, eyes on the ground. Hermione tried to take Harry's hand, but he shook his head. "I've got to sit down," he said. "It hurts." "What hurts?" she asked. Harry drew his jacket open, and she looked down and saw that the black handle of a 10-inch knife was protruding from between his ribs. His white t-shirt was turning red, and the blood was pattering down onto his shoes like rain. "The knife," he said. "It's not mine, you know. It's Draco's." Hermione screamed. "Hermione, wake up!" said a voice in her ear. She opened her eyes and saw Sirius's face. Normally, she'd never voluntarily cut short a dream with Harry in it, but she was glad to be rid of that one. What a horrible dream, she thought. "Sirius," she said in a croaky voice. "Hey." His face split into a tired smile. "You're awake," he said. "That's good. Sorry about yelling at you. I don't have my wand, so I had to do the best I could." Hermione began to raise herself up on her elbows. Every part of her body hurt as if she had been beaten. She looked around. They were in a dank, rock-bound cell with one barred wall and a stone bench that ran along the opposite wall. She seemed to be alone with Sirius. "Oh my God," she said, sitting straight up and grabbing Sirius's arm. "Harry and Draco, where are they?" "I don't know," said Sirius, looking very sober. "I was hoping you could tell me that." She shook her head wildly. "A group of Death Eaters brought you down here," he said reluctantly. "They tossed you in with me and left. Harry and Draco went with them." He patted her shoulder awkwardly. "Do you remember what happened, Hermione?" Hermione felt herself teetering on the edge of panicky tears. "It was horrible," she said. "The Death Eaters took Draco. They think he's Harry. And Harry—" The tears threatened to spill over, but she forced herself to speak, slowly, filling Sirius in on the whole evening's events. "And then Draco took off the invisibility cloak, and they sort of closed in around him. I didn't see what happened after that. I think Lucius hit me with the stupefying hex. Draco could be dead, Sirius." "They won't kill him," said Sirius. "They'll wait to summon he who must not be named for that. So we have a little time." "How much time does it take to summon him?" asked Hermione wildly. "How long does it take to get him here?" "Well," said Sirius reluctantly, "it's not like he takes the bus, Hermione. He can probably apparate here instantly. But if I know Lucius, he'll want to have everything prepared and perfect beforehand. No nasty surprises for the Dark Lord when he gets here." "I hate Lucius," said Hermione vehemently. "He's a freakish, evil, jewelry-wearing pervert who doesn't even care about his own son." "He's a lot more than that," said Sirius, with a half-smile, then broke off and looked at her thoughtfully. "What did you say about Lucius wearing jewelry?" "He has this really ugly pendant he wears," said Hermione. "He seems very attached to it. He kept putting his hand on it when he was, trying to have it off with me in the study." She blushed furiously. "Describe it," said Sirius. So Hermione did. A gold chain with a clear glass charm pendant, in which an object was suspended. An object that looked like a human tooth. When she got to the part about the tooth, Sirius jumped to his feet and started pacing back and forth across the cell. "I thought so," he muttered. "It's been in the back of my mind all this time. I just didn't know how he was doing it." "Doing what?" said Hermione, turning her head to follow Sirius's anxious progress. "Controlling her," said Sirius. "Controlling who?" demanded Hermione. "Narcissa," he said, sitting down heavily on the bench. "Sirius," she said firmly, "enough with the free association. Please speak English." "I don't know how he got her to marry him in the first place," said Sirius, obviously still thinking out loud. "She always hated him. I think he must have used some kind of coercion charm on her, if not the Imperius curse itself." "Are you saying he forced Narcissa to marry him?" said Hermione, interested despite herself. "Oh, that's just the sort of thing he'd do, isn't it?" She frowned. "But it doesn't make sense. He can't have kept her under the Imperius curse or something like that for 17 years. She'd be dead. Or mad." "He wouldn't have needed to after the first year or so," said Sirius quietly. "He had something much better." He looked down at Hermione's bewildered expression. "Have you ever heard of an imbecilical charm?" "Lucius has a book about them in his study." She shuddered. "It looks really nasty. The book, I mean." "They're spells that have to do with transferring the essence of people and animals into things. It's hard to explain, but a lot of it is dark magic for reasons that should be obvious. You can take something from a person. The younger they are when you do it, the better. Like hair or a tooth. And turn it into an object, like a pendant. And that object will contain the essence of that person, what the Greeks called the life spark. If you destroy or damage the thing..." "You kill the person?" said Hermione. "Exactly." "So Lucius, you think he took one of Draco's teeth when he was a baby?" "I think," said Sirius, "he's been wearing Draco's life around his neck since the day Draco was born. Draco wouldn't have known about it, of course, but Narcissa would. All Lucius would have to do is break the pendant, crush it, and Draco would die. If Narcissa left him, if she defied him..." "But Draco's his son," said Hermione. "His only heir. He said so." "He's just a possession to Lucius," said Sirius. "You don't know him, but I knew him at the Ministry. He was a master manipulator. Draco would just be a thing to him, something to own and control." Hermione thought of her own boring dentist parents. "Poor Draco," she said. Harry hurtled down the corridors, praying not to be seen. "Hey, kid, slow down!" yelled the portrait of one of Draco's vampire ancestors as he passed it. He darted in through the oak double doors of the fencing room. It was just as it had been when Lucius had brought Harry on his first day at the manor, or nearly so. The fencing ring and tapestries showing scenes of wizard battles were unchanged, but in the far corner a weird kind of structure had been erected. It was something the likes of which Harry had never seen before. Glittering bars of light, each about 5 inches apart, ran from floor to ceiling in the shape of a rough square, about 5 feet by 7 feet. It was a cage, Harry realized. A cage made of light, and inside the cage was Draco. Harry approached the cage cautiously. It was evident that it was a powerful magical object, and Harry's experience with powerful magical objects told him that they were not to be messed with. Draco was lying on his back on the floor, staring up at the ceiling. For a moment, Harry was afraid they might have put the bodybind curse on him, but he turned his head as Harry approached and almost smiled. He had a black eye, and his upper lip was cut. Under his left sleeve cuff, Harry could see that one of his wrists was swollen to the size of a tennis ball. "Hey," he said. "They knocked you around," said Harry flatly. "It's all right," said Draco, returning his gaze to the ceiling. "If there's one thing I've learned when I was a kid, it's how to take a beating." Harry knelt down next to the bars. "Malfoy," he said, "Narcissa told me what you did. That was the bravest thing I've ever heard of. Also the stupidest, but it was really brave." "Thanks," said Draco. "It was probably you, the brave bit, and the stupid bit." Harry shook his head. "I don't think so. Well," he admitted, "maybe the stupid bit." Draco smiled faintly. "Look," said Harry, "I came up here to get you out. Then you can let me down into the dungeons and we can get—" Draco shook his head. "Not possible," he said. "I know this imprisonment charm. It would take a really powerful dark wizard or an aura to take it off, and the bars are physically unbreakable." Harry couldn't believe Draco seemed so resigned. "I won't leave you here," he said. "This might be the time you learn that there are some things even you can't do," said Draco. "Might be good for you." "Not for you, though," said Harry. "Come on, Malfoy. Think." "Okay. There is one thing." Draco was looking at the ceiling again. "What?" "I think you know, Potter," said Draco. "In fact, it's something you'll probably enjoy." Harry shook his head, bewildered. Draco sat up and crawled over to where Harry was kneeling, taking care not to put weight on his sprained wrist. "It's pretty simple, really," he said. "I need you to kill me." Harry goggled at him. "What?" "I can teach you to do Avada Kedavra," said Draco in a helpful tone. "It won't be hard." "You're mental," said Harry, awed. "I'm not going to kill you, Malfoy." Draco was now kneeling opposite Harry. He looked at him very intently. "Think about it, Potter," he said. "It'll just be dying a little earlier than I will anyway when they get their hands on me and do that Lycertus thing. And what'll happen if it works? They'll put the Imperius curse on me and use me as a tool to kill muggles and mudbloods. I might not last as long as you. I haven't got a will as strong as yours. But I'll last long enough to kill the first muggle-born I come across. And who do you think that will be?" Harry shut his eyes. "My dad will think it's pretty funny to make Harry Potter murder his own girlfriend," said Draco flatly. "In fact, if he's keeping Hermione alive, that's probably why." "I hate your father," said Harry without opening his eyes. "Yeah," said Draco. "I hate him too." And they were silent for a moment, neither of them looking at the other, heads bent in fierce contemplation. One dark, one fair, one outside the prison bars, one within. "It's really a pity we're not related," said Draco finally, in a far-off voice. "I bet your friend Sirius down in the dungeon could take the imprisonment charm off. He's meant to be a really powerful wizard." "Yeah," said Harry. "If only—" He broke off, jerked his head up, and stared wildly at Draco. "That's it," he breathed. That is it. You're brilliant, Malfoy. I would kiss you, but that would be gross. Draco looked at him blankly. Huh? Give me your hand, said Harry. Why? Said Draco suspiciously. Just give it to me, said Harry impatiently. With the expression of someone who no longer cared what happened to him, Draco put his hand through the bars, and Harry took it. It was the first time in his life he had ever touched Draco Malfoy voluntarily, and later he would have cause to remember the moment. But right now he was in too much of a hurry to think about it. He scrabbled into the pocket of his pants with the other hand, took out the knife Sirius had given him for his 14th birthday, and flicked open the blade. And he slashed it viciously across Draco's palm. Blood spurted out of the cut, drenching the sleeve of Draco's shirt. Hey! Said Draco, trying to yank his hand back. What are you doing? But Harry had now turned the knife on himself and cut his own palm open. He dropped the knife, extended his hand, and seized Draco's bleeding one, pressing the cuts tightly together. I'm touched that you want to be blood brothers with me, said Draco, peering down at their bloody, interlocked hands. But is this really the time? Shut up, Malfoy, said Harry, who was grinning like a madman. Come on, think about it. Malfoy blood. Only someone with Malfoy blood in their veins can open the trapdoor. Draco's mouth fell open. Then he leaned forward and gripped Harry's hand as tightly as he could, so tightly his knuckles turned white. What are you doing? Asked Harry, laughing. What does it look like, Potter? I'm trying to bleed faster. Harry approached the trapdoor nervously and put his right hand, still sticky with his own blood and Draco's, on the handle. Nothing happened. There was no screaming and no alarm. Emboldened, Harry yanked the door open and crawled down into the space below. He wondered how long they had before Lucius and the others came for Draco. Draco. He was actually thinking of him by his first name now, something he would never have thought was possible, especially since it made him physically ill every time Hermione said the word Draco. As he rounded a cobwebbed corner, he thought about Hermione saying that Draco had changed. Maybe she was right. He had been convinced it was only the polyjuice spell, but was a spell like that really powerful enough to counteract an entire lifetime devoted entirely to self-interest and compel someone otherwise not heroically inclined to risk his own life for the lives of people he hardly knew? Harry wasn't sure. What he did know was that, for whatever reason, Draco had saved Hermione from torture and probably death. That put Harry in Draco's debt. He didn't want to be like Snape, doomed to a lifetime of guilt and resentment. He wasn't going to let Draco Malfoy die while he owed him anything. He was at the dungeon gate now, and lifted his bloody hand to close it around the lock, which came away as if it had been made of spaghetti. He dropped it, pushed the gate open, and hurried inside. Sirius and Hermione were sitting together on the stone bench at the cell's far end. Sirius looking, well, extremely serious as he explained something to her, and Hermione was nodding and still looked ridiculously pretty in Narcissa's satin dress. She seemed to sense that Harry was there before he even said anything. She leapt to her feet and ran across the cell, thrusting her arm through the bars to catch at his hand. Harry, you're okay. Yeah. Ow! He winced as she squeezed his slashed hand. She saw the blood and gasped. Did Lucius? No, it's not all my blood, he said. Some of it's Draco's. She turned greenish. Is he all right? Is he hurt? They beat him up, but not too badly. They're saving him for Voldemort, said Harry tensely. He turned to Sirius. Do you know anything about imprisonment spells? Draco lay on his back, looking up at the ceiling. He supposed he should be writhing around in panic, but he wasn't. An icy sort of peace had descended on him, and he felt almost nothing. Harry was in the tunnels under the house now. Draco shut his eyes. He could find Harry better in the darkness. It was a little as if there was a cord of invisible light connecting them, with him on one end and Harry on the other. Sometimes it tugged at him, demanding his attention. Other times, it was very hard to find Harry at the opposite end. Right now it was easy. He could almost see him, and it kept him from feeling as if he was alone. Hermione was with Harry now. It hurt to think about her, like the pain of a broken tooth. But she was alive, and that was at least partly because of him. He wasn't sorry he had done what he had done. He had always sat back and watched Harry doing the ridiculous heroic things that he did and wondered not only why he did them, but how. Now he knew. You just did what you had to do. There was only one choice that made sense, one way to go, and you took it. It was inevitably simple. He wondered, though, would the choice seem so effortless if he didn't have Harry in his head? When the door of the fencing room opened, Draco thought for a moment that he was imagining it. He turned his head slowly. It was his father, and Lucius wasn't alone. A very tall man in long black robes with the hood pulled up was with him. He was wearing red gloves and carrying a wand. He walked quickly across the room and over to the cage. "Liberos," he said, and his voice was a horrible hissing thing. The bars of the cage vanished and Draco sat up. He suddenly felt naked, unprotected. The tall man came closer to him and peered down into his face. Then he reached up and drew his hood back. Draco stifled a yell. A bald, hairless skull the color of old parchment, yellow slitted eyes with vertical cat pupils, slits for nostrils, a lipless mouth. "Lucius," said the horrible voice, which belonged, Draco now knew, to Lord Voldemort. "You have done very well here. Very well indeed." Once he let Hermione and Sirius out of the cell, Sirius made Harry describe the glowing cage in which they were keeping Draco several times before he was satisfied. "I can take the spell off," he said, "but I'll need my wand." "You can use mine," offered Hermione, but Sirius shook his head. "This is a very involved charm," he said. "I need my own wand. I know where it is. Lucius put it in the drawer in his study. In dog form, I can get up there a lot faster than you can. I think I should go ahead, and you two come behind. I'll take the imprisonment charm off, if I can, and meet you in Draco's bedroom." "What if—" Hermione swallowed hard. "You know who's already got him." Sirius looked grim. "Then I'll still meet you, and we'll figure out what to do from there," he said. He put his hand on Harry's shoulder, and Harry looked up at him for a second. Then he nodded. "Okay." Sirius let go of Harry and turned immediately into his canine form, in which he loped out of the dungeon. Harry and Hermione followed more slowly. Harry was very silent and looked very unhappy. He was walking very fast, nearly running. "Is Draco all right?" Hermione asked timidly. "I mean, you said he wasn't too badly hurt, but he must be really afraid." He's not too good. In fact, he asked me to kill him," said Harry, climbing over a pile of broken stone. He turned back to help Hermione over the pile and found that she had stopped climbing and was goggling at him. "What? What did you say, Harry?" "I took out my trusty knife and stuck it in his throat. What do you think I said?" snapped Harry, nettled. "I told him he was mental. I'm not going to kill him." Hermione started to climb after him without assistance. "Why? Not why wouldn't you kill him, but why, did he ask?" "If they put the Lycertus curse on him, it'll kill him anyway," said Harry soberly. "He doesn't want them to do it. He doesn't want to risk that he might end up murdering people. He said it would just be dying a little earlier than he would anyway." Hermione stopped, stock still again. Harry began wondering if they were ever going to make any progress. "Harry," she said. "What?" "That's something you said our first year, when you were going after the philosopher's stone. You said that if you know who got you, it would just be dying a little earlier than you would anyway." They looked at each other. "You think that was me talking?" said Harry uneasily. Hermione looked extremely unhappy. "I don't know," she said. "I don't want to think so." "I don't think it was," said Harry rather unexpectedly. Hermione smiled at him. "I hope not," she said. "I already invited him to come visit me over the summer." Now it was Harry's turn to stop walking. "He'll turn your whole family into toads, Hermione," he said. "He will not," she said obstinately. "My parents were like him. He's got really good manners, and he dresses well, and he's read Hogwarts a history." Harry turned around. Then he came up to Hermione, took her by the arms, and stared intently into her face, something he had never done before. "Do you like him, Hermione? I know you kissed him and all, but do you like him?" "Yeah," she said, surprising herself. "I do. I really do." "Do you love him?" "Harry! Could you love him?" "Yes!" she exclaimed. "Yes, I could!" She tried to yank her arms away, but he held on tightly. "I'm getting really fed up with this whole big brother thing, Harry," she added sharply. "I'm not 12, and I'm not an idiot, and it is my business who I want to—" "Hermione," he interrupted her furiously, "you're so stupid." And he kissed her. It was nothing like kissing Draco. Kissing Draco was sweet and intoxicating and fun. Kissing Harry was none of those things, little like a bomb going off in her head. She felt herself clutching at Harry as if she might fall, felt Harry gripping her arms with a force that was painful. She would have bruises, but she didn't care. She couldn't breathe, but she didn't care. She could feel Harry's heart beating wildly against hers, and that was what mattered. That and the pressure of his mouth on her, and the yearning she felt from him as he kissed her. It was a shock when he let go of her and stepped back. She saw that his chest was rising and falling rapidly, as if he had been running. He continued backing up until he was standing against the opposite wall, staring at her in what looked a lot like horror. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to do that. I'm really sorry." She was bewildered. "Why? What are you sorry for?" "This." He gestured vaguely at her, at himself. "You and me. Things are chaotic enough already. I didn't mean to make the situation even worse." "Worse?" Hermione stared at him. "Are you saying that kissing me was a bad thing?" "No, kissing you was great," said Harry weakly. Then he straightened up, looking determined. "But I'm still not going to do it again." "Why not?" said Hermione. "Because," said Harry. He had taken his knife out of his pocket and was fiddling with it. It still had blood on the blade. "It would be wrong." "Wrong? Was he crazy?" "Draco was right," she said flatly. "You have gone mad." "I haven't. I've given this a lot of thought, Hermione." He was looking desperately unhappy, but Hermione had no patience left to feel sorry for him. She took 2 steps forward and grabbed him by the front of his robes. "Say it," she said. He refused to look at her. "I can't." "Say it, Harry!" Now he looked angry and stubborn, as only Harry could be stubborn. "If you're asking me to tell you how I feel about you," he said, "I can't. I can't and I won't." "I asked you once before," she said. "I'm not going to ask you again. This is it, Harry. This is the last chance you get. Do you understand?" "I can't," he said again. "Good," she said, and shoved him away. His knife fell to the floor, and she bent to pick it up. When she straightened up, she saw Harry staring at her. "Good," he echoed in disbelief. "Yeah," she said, handing the knife to him. Mechanically, he took it. "For 4 years I've been wondering if you were, you know, the one for me. And now," she said, "now I know you aren't." Harry's eyes were wide. "Hermione, But she brushed past him and started walking. Harry stood there for a moment, gripping the knife very tightly in his hands. Then he followed her. In dog form, Sirius raced up through the twisting corridors of the dungeons and hurtled out of the trap door. Keeping to the shadows, he crept through the hallways, heading in the direction he recalled that Lucius's study was located. It was lucky, he thought, very lucky, that the house was so deserted. He couldn't imagine where Lucius and the Death Eaters were, but there didn't seem to be anyone around. He turned the handle of Lucius's study door with a paw and patted inside, and what he saw shocked him so much that he turned back into his human form without even thinking. Narcissa was sitting behind Lucius's oak desk. She was very pale, and she was holding Sirius's wand in her hands. When she saw him, her eyes began to dart wildly around the room. "Sirius," she said, and she held out the wand to him with a shaking hand. "I knew you'd come for this. Take it and quickly and go." He took it, having a mad urge to touch her hand as he did so, but repressed it. "The fencing room," he said gently. "How do I get there?" She shook her head. "Just leave, Sirius." "Narcissa," he said, "I need to get to Harry before the Dark Lord comes for him. Do you understand?" "I understand," she replied. "The Dark Lord has already come for him." Draco couldn't believe how hideous Voldemort was. He had never really thought about it, but had always assumed that the Dark Lord looked a lot like any other Death Eater, maybe a little taller or paler, but still human. Looking at Voldemort's slitted, cat-like eyes and scaly, noseless face, Draco suddenly felt sorry for Harry, having to face him time after time, seeing that face in his dreams. It would be horrible. Draco knew he should be feeling anxious, but he wasn't. He didn't know why. Partly, he supposed, it was that he could still feel Harry and Hermione at the end of the invisible cord. They were coming up through the tunnels, looking for him, and he could feel the concern and worry. It made him feel less alone, even if he knew there was no way they would make it in time. He looked over at his father, who was looking both apprehensive and greedily hopeful.
"Are you pleased, Master?"
Lucius Malfoy said.
"I am," said the Dark Lord. "Lucius, you and your Death Eaters have done very well."
"Lucius and the Death Eaters," said Draco, wishing his voice didn't sound so croaky. "Kind of sounds like a band name." Lucius and Voldemort both stared at him. Draco stared back. If he was going to die, he was determined to die being obnoxious, which, after all, was what he was good at. The Dark Lord bent and put his hand against Draco's forehead, directly on Harry's lightning scar. His hand was cold.
"Does my touch burn you?"
he said in his horrible voice.
"Does it pain you, Harry Potter?"
"No," said Draco, "but it tickles like hell." It was evident that Voldemort didn't have a sense of humor. He looked at Lucius, who stared back at him blankly and shrugged. "He's lying," said Lucius. Voldemort's ugly cat eyes narrowed.
"Is he?"
He reached down and drew off one of his gloves. The hand revealed underneath was like a large pale spider with long black nails. There were deep grooves along his palm, like healed cuts or burns.
"Take my hand, Harry Potter,"
he said, holding it out to Draco. "Not until you put some lotion on those cuts," said Draco. "They look really nasty."
"Take my hand!"
Voldemort's hand whipped out with the speed of a striking snake and seized hold of Draco's, which he crushed in his grip. It was the hand Harry had cut open, and the pain was sharp. The Dark Lord's own hand was as dry and scaly as lizard skin. He had no pulse at all. Draco wrenched his hand away as quickly as he could. The Dark Lord turned to Lucius Malfoy, and the look on his face was not pleasant at all.
"Is this some kind of ruse, Lucius?"
I don't know what you mean," Lucius stammered.
"This,"
and Voldemort waved a contemptuous hand at Draco,
"is not Harry Potter. Did you think a feeble disguise would fool me? I, who carry Harry Potter's own blood in my veins. I don't know who this is. Some muggle you've tricked out with Polyjuice Potion. What were you hoping to accomplish, Lucius?"
Lucius Malfoy's face had gone the color of cottage cheese.
"Not Harry Potter?"
he gurgled.
"Don't pretend you don't know,"
said Voldemort, but Lucius was too far gone with shock to say anything at all. He was goggling at Draco. Draco waved at him.
"Who are you?"
Lucius said to him in a hushed voice.
"One of Potter's friends?"
"Not hardly," said Draco.
"There is a simple solution to this question, Lucius,"
said Voldemort. He took out his wand and jammed the tip of it into Draco's throat, which hurt quite a lot.
"Finite incantatum,"
said the Dark Lord. For a moment, nothing happened, and Draco was sure the spell hadn't worked. Then the sensation of melting that he remembered washed over him again, accompanied by pain that tore through his nerves like a flight of tiny arrows. It was as if his own skin were being ripped away. His bones melted and reformed. He doubled up and fell to the ground on all fours, gasping, his vision blurring. He seemed to see his own body from a long way away, saw himself changing, and he saw the narrow cord of light that stretched between himself and Harry snap like an overburdened fishing line. The vision of Harry he could see behind his inner lids spun away into the darkness, and he was alone. Draco sat up slowly, feeling the pain ebb away. His vision was still blurred, but that, he realized, was because he was still wearing Harry's glasses, which he no longer needed. He reached up to remove them, but his hands were shaking so badly that it took him 3 tries before he could get them off. He looked up. His father and Voldemort were staring at him. Voldemort with curiosity, and Lucius with an expression that said that all his worst nightmares had just come true in one horrible moment.
Lucius, isn't that your son?
The Dark Lord said. And that is it for this chapter, guys. A quick note, we actually have some quotations for this chapter. So when Draco says, "but it tickles like hell," is from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So if you could do all of the things, if you are enjoying this, like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, especially if you are enjoying this type of content, and be sure to check out my Patreon, which is completely separate from these, but which have my personal writings and also art of the spicy variety. And that is all. So for now, I will see you all in the next one.